Hey, you chickadees, I'm Lay Rooster, and you're in the hen house. We're looking at New World and looking at character building and class design, getting you started in this game. If you are coming to this game from another MMO or from a computer role-playing game of any sort, you're probably approaching New World and thinking about what kind of class would I like to play? Well, one of the things about this game is that it's a classless system, like a few games out there or that have come in the past. So you do not have a class that you're going to pick. That doesn't mean that you can't create your own class or kind of follow some of the traditional role-playing game and Dungeons and Dragons types of tropes with casters and with tanks and with DPS builds and rogues and dexterous characters, etc. You just have to work it a little different way in order to create that. And I've put together this guide in order to help you get started and to look at some of your options and to be aware of some of the major pitfalls and things to consider as you craft that character, because it is possible to create a character that has a lot of the elements that you find would be cool, but it really is shooting yourself in the foot and gimping yourself all along, and that's not going to be enjoyable for you either. So I want to present that stuff out there. Make sure you stay for all the big points in there, and please consider subscribing as we're doing a subscriber push and giving us a like and a comment on the video. You can catch my videos on live stream on Twitch in the evenings where I stream Pacific time, as well as some live streams here on YouTube as well. So make sure you hit the notification bell and come join me on Twitch as well. So let's get into some of this. All right, I've got my one of my alts out here. Nothing too low. This is kind of a dexterous character, but we want to look at that. That way we can kind of look at the scenes for creating characters. So here we go. When you look at your character, there are three main points to really look at as for character class. One is going to be the interplay of the two weapons that you're going to choose to really make your class, as well as the abilities that you use specific for those two abilities and how they interplay or any synergies. So there's that piece. Number two is going to be the way that you use and allocate your attribute points in order to support those abilities and make you better at the game, doing more damage, more healing, more blasting and casting, that sort of thing. And the third one is looking at your armor and weight issues so that you can make sure that works with the way of the playstyle that you're looking for, because that becomes rather important. Because again, there are some things you may be working towards and you have to have a specific weight class in order to take advantage of or to do it better. In the game, now I've played in alpha and the betas and all that, and so there were times where different weapons have been more overpowered than others, but you can generally make a good play of a character with most of the weapons that you want. If you pick some stuff that goes together and follow some of the rules that I'm going over here, you can have some fun and do things that you want. However, you do want to look at that. So, but you need to think about a few comments about, how am I going to do damage, which is usually something you're thinking about anyway. What am I going to do if I get in trouble and need some kind of escape, or I need to heal myself or something like that? And how am I going to play? How am I going to deal with people who either, like in PvP, if people are trying to get away from you, or if you're trying to close distance, or and if you're kind of dealing well with the distance, what are you going to do when they're all up in your grill? So you want to be thinking about those types of things as you kind of craft that character. Now, so that kind of leads us into the weapons. So when you're creating a character in New World, like I said, the point number one is the interplay of the two weapons for your class. This is where you start getting your theory crafting and allow your imagination to go. You can see these are the current weapons that we have. We got your one-handed weapons of sword and shield, rapier and hatchet, the two-handed of spear, great axe, and warhammer, the ranged weapons of the bow and the musket, and the magic weapons, the fire staff, the life staff, and the ice gauntlet. So these are all the weapons that exist at the moment. That is surely subject to change in the future with some future expansions and things like that. So you want to think about, okay, what kind of things are cool to do? What kind of things do I want to do? Play. So, you may think about some different stuff. Again, if you're doing, when you look in here and hover on it, it does tell you some stuff about the weapon and gives you a hint towards some of the way that it is made to play. Not that you have to play it particularly that way, but with the sword and shield, it's like airing of melee-focused weapons that, when combined, offer solid offense and defense. Utilize a combination of arcing swings and lunges for the offensive melee attacks, and a shield to maximize defenses. Okay, so it tells you a little bit about that. Like you can see with this character that I'm working on in this alt in particular, I am using the rapier, which it notes is a speed-oriented melee weapon, and there's a bunch of things with bleeds on it. And I'm also using the bow and the musket. Why am I using 3? Well, because I'm kind of trying them out and deciding which one I like better. And by following the tactics that I have here, these actually work together, and I'll show you where these things come into play. So the idea here was I wanted to be some type of sniper ranged hunter ranger. Is a character class for this one. So that naturally leads me to the bow or the musket. So I'm doing some range damage and hopefully heavy damage with both of them. You see, I've been trying to build them up a little bit. But then the idea is also, what do I use for when they get up in my grill? Because, you know, you hit people with bows and muskets, they run up on you. And particularly something like the musket is a little slower reload. So when they get up on there, you can have some problems. So that's where the rapier comes into play for me in this case. Now, why did I choose the rapier? Well, and that has to do with the interplay of the weapons themselves. So that brings us, so we're talking about the interplay of the weapons, but let's look at the attributes now, because that's part 2 of considering how you build a class. All right, so going over to the attributes, like in this one, you can see that I have a heavy amount put in dexterity and far less. I have Constitution is pretty high, and you'll see, but I have only actually put no points into it. It's just all coming from item buffs and all that. But so again, now if you're familiar with role-playing games or Dungeons and Dragons and things like that, you know, you're somewhat familiar. Strength usually comes into play with melee and makes you stronger and hit harder with melee weapons. Dexterity, if you're familiar with that, usually with finesse type weapons, which the rapier is a traditional thing. And things like your ranged attacks like bows and muskets. Intelligence is usually something that casters care about, and it is, although it has some more interplay here. Focus is more of, well, kind of like the D&D wisdom stat, and it has to do with healing. It is very much about healing here, if you're looking at that. And then Constitution is how much health pool do you have? How alive are you? And how long will it take before you are dead? All of those things are good. Everybody can use some Constitution, but there's a lot of focus here. So, well, not that kind of focus, but anyway. So those are part of the basic things, but one of the nice things that they do have here is you'll see, like up strength, there's the icons for some of the weapons, and they're different. What they're doing is telling you about the primary and secondary stats, because certain weapons have a primary stat. All weapons have a primary stat, but some of them also have a secondary stat or attribute that you can put points in that are going to help make that more effective. And you can play around with some of that. But remember that all your points don't have to come from placing them. You can get points just like I have a bunch, well, I have several in Constitution that are coming from items. So you can do that, and by doing some different gearing, that will allow you some options that that is, I think, very valuable. So, and when we look at the strength, you'll note that the sword and shield is a strength-based one, and it scales with strength and dexterity, it says. The great axe, just strength. The warhammer, just strength. The hatchet, strength and dexterity. And the spear scales with dexterity and strength, meaning that, like it says, the secondary attribute for the spear. So if you're thinking that you like the spear, this is coming in this comes in more on dexterity, but also the strength is going to help. So considering these abilities, when you start thinking about that, dexterity includes, there's that spear again coming in and the hatchet, but you see also the bow is scaling straight with dexterity, and the rapier is dexterity intelligence, and so is the musket. And then your magic, fire staff, and ice gauntlets on intelligence, but the rapier and the musket being that secondary. And then the life staff only on focus and nothing on constitution, but everybody needs con in order to be alive. All right. So let's look. So when you're starting to look at these weapons on your weapon mastery page and starting to think about, oh man, I like, what's this spear do? Melee, it has a long reach for aggressive thrusting, perfect for keeping targets at a distance, strategic positioning, and applying persistent pressure to targets. So that sounds cool. You're thinking maybe you want to do the spear, but you want to look at the attributes. And so since the spear is scaling with dexterity and strength, that means if you're going to focus on the spear, you're going to need a lot in dexterity. Your secondary area that you may want to either be building up with items or attribute points will be strength. So, if you're doing a spear build, you want to pick something else that either pick one of the weapons as a secondary weapon that will support your playstyle, that maybe is also scaling from dexterity or scaling maybe from strength. So that way, because you know you're going to be putting some points and you're not wasting. If you spread yourself too thin, like doing something with this is dexterity and strength for the spear, and you want to do the fire staff, which scales with intelligence, you're going to need to have some dexterity, some strength boosting, and some intelligence to be effective there. And that's going to probably spread you too thin, because you probably also want to have some constitution or some points there. So that's some of the pitfalls to avoid. Another thing to note here with the attributes is, as you see along, there's these pip points. They're at 50 points, 100, 150, and so on. So when, like in dexterity, you get a 5% chance to critical hit, and you get an increased skinning speed. So, and then it goes up, you get some thrust damage and haste after skinning. So those things matter. Now, one of the things to consider is dumping stats in so that you hit these pips. If you have 50 points to spread in your attributes, and you're like saying maybe you're doing a dexterity and strength build, you're thinking, well, I could do 25 and 25 in strength and dexterity, and that would kind of make it well-rounded. Although you'd be losing out on getting one of these two pips, either at 50 on strength or 50 on dexterity. So you want to make sure you're allocating your points in a way to maximize achieving these pip points and noting which ones you're wanting to get before you start bleeding off some of the points in there. So that is to be aware. So make sure the attributes that you're going to need work with the way that you want the ability to play out. So again, as we're looking at that. So when you're looking at the abilities, it can be a little helpful. Like if we go into the rapier, one thing is, you can see I'm just getting started with this alt character. One way, there's always two parts to the abilities. Like this one has the blood tree and the grace tree. You can mix and match them. However, you do have to be a little careful about what you're doing, again, because you can go cross purposes. But there are plenty of times where it does work really well for you. So you can see I've stayed on the blood tree. One way to kind of figure out the basic nuts and bolts of a tree is to go down to the ultimate ability here. Like this one has Bloody End. It says finishes deal 150% of the rapier's bleed damage instead of only 110%. Okay, well, you're saying, well, what that is indicating for you is that bleed damage is a big focus of, well, surprisingly, the blood tree. All right, so it's going to be doing things related to bleeds. So that is damage over time. And bleeding. So there's a lot of stacking bleeds, doing cooldowns, having things based on what's going on with your bleeds, and then those bleed damage being increased with the finish. Like over here, you gain increased damage on your next light or heavy attack after performing an ability, and so it has to do with some of your attacks and your moves and your flitting back and forth. And as another example, if we look at the bow. Actually, no, I wanted to show you the musket as a good example here. Like if we're looking at the trapper line with the musket down at there, it says increase musket damage by 20% against targets affected by the trapper tree status effects. So you're going to be applying a bunch of status effects within the trapper thing. You know, it slows them, it hampers and hinders them. Different things like that. That's like a caltrop, a sticky bomb, different things in the trap. So these things get boosted, and then this increases it as an ultimate ability. So that gives you an idea of some of the components. Now, but over here on the sharpshooter, it has to do with increasing damage to headshots. And there are a lot of different pieces of passives in here and boosts that have to do with boosting like headshots. So as long as you're not going for some part of the mix and match on a particular tree that kind of goes against the way it is, the way it's benefiting you, because you know if you're going for this ultimate, you want to be focusing a lot on headshots, or else you're probably not going to get as much bang for your buck. Unintended here with the muskets. that sort of thing. Now, so once you, as you look at these weapons, you start thinking about, okay, well, if I'm using the spear can be thrown a little bit short range, so it gives you an option to reach out with range. That means maybe you don't need as much range. It also allows you to do some kind of crowd control or some different, like the vault kick, vaulting you forward to get to your target, some different things like the sweeps that sweep the legs, Danielson, and get people down. So there's some of those crowd control components to consider. So then you can figure out, do I need a ranged weapon to back me up? So we talked about how like the spear with dexterity could work well with the bow. The spear also needs some strength. Now you could go with something like the hatchet, which in the thing, the hatchet is scaling on strength and dexterity. So that could be for some of your up close things. Be an interesting build. I'm pretty sure it's out there, and would be kind of fun. And again, you have those options. Now, when it comes to healing and the life staff, that is focus based. So there is no other weapon at the moment. I think the Void Gauntlet's going to come out and it's going to be focus when it comes out, but it isn't out yet. So you can do some split things. On one of my other characters, I'm doing a life staff with a warhammer, which is strength. And of course, because it's strength, I also could use the great axe just to be kind of simple about it. Now, one of the things that down the road happens is you can choose to get a weapon, like a strength-based weapon, like the Warhammer, and use a gem. There's an amber gem you can do as a healer, and socket it in there, and it's going to make the that particular Warhammer scale off my focus. So I'm putting all my points in focus over there. So that's just to give you some ideas of how you might mix and match some of these and to see. But with the idea with that life staff and a Warhammer is, the life staff, of course, does healing, and it does some magic damage at range, so I can target things and shoot them away. But then they come on and get in my grill. The hammer lets me deal melee damage, but it also has a crowd control effect, so I'm able to do some stuff that focuses on crowd control, to stun them, to buy me time, to knock them away from me, so maybe I can get away or attack them more from range and get range back again. So that's kind of the concept of that class for me. Now, when we are looking at weapon mastery pieces, other things to consider. This is the bow tree, right? Like on the skirmisher line, it has one ability, evade shot, where you basically, people get up in your grill, you shoot them while jumping back so as to get distance. That's kind of giving you an idea of what you're doing. Now, there are things like passives like this, evasive tactics. After you dodge, deal 20% more damage for 5 seconds. That sounds great, right? And if like you're slowing people, after you dodge, gain 10% haste for 2 seconds, meaning you move faster, right? Down here, leg shots slow people down because you're dodging, you're getting haste, right? So this is where you're using a lot of dodge stuff. Now, again, the thoughts are, what am I trying to do? And if I like the idea of playing with a lot of dodging, weaving, running, and all that, then maybe with these passives that are related to dodge, that's important. If you look at the Warhammer, I've got some stuff in the crowd control on my other character. There are some points in here. Reduce stamina when blocking indicates that you might be doing some blocking, and light attacks and targets with active stuff. So there's some different pieces. There's sometimes where you're going to be doing some blocks, or you're going to be blocking, and you're going to be or dodging, weaving, that sort of thing. And part of that is thinking about your playstyle, is where we talked about looking at your armor set. There's traditional rules from like Dungeons and Dragons and many role-playing games that like casters wear light armor, they wear robes, so they are glass cannons, things like that. And tanks wear heavy armor. These things are generally true, but there's more interplay and there's a bit more options to keep in mind here. So if you can look, there's a weight system on this, and this is governed by the gear that you have. And you don't have to stay all light, medium, or heavy on here. But as you can see, when you hover in this section where it starts talking about your equipment load. So I'm currently light with this one. And again, I'm using a rapier, and I have a lot of dexterity, and I'm using bows and muskets. So it says, while wearing light armor, your dodge is a quick roll that covers a lot of distance. You deal 20% bonus damage and healing. So I do more damage when you're at light, or more healing. And the dodge effect actually moves me further around the screen or in the game. So if I'm trying to get distance, this is the dodge for me. Now, if I'm also using passive abilities that play into the dodge effect, and I want to dodge more, like when you can dodge on the life staff, and that'll boost some stuff too. Or there's one with blocking, and so usually you're dodging to get out of the way, or you're blocking because you're standing up there and saying, "You shall not pass." So you got to choose, but it has to do with your weight. You don't want to be wearing light armor and doing, "I'll block this attack." You want to dodge and roll. So you like to have that. The best way to dodge, the most dodges and covering most ground, is it while maintaining a light armor class. So that that plays into your class too. Now, when you get to medium, which it says wearing medium armor, your dodge is a quick hop, meaning it doesn't go as far. You deal 10% bonus damage and healing, so it's half, but it's still 10% more than you would in the other. And your crowd control debuffs that you apply last 10% longer. So if you're applying a lot of crowd control debuffs, now there are a lot of things like that hammer with crowd control. There's different ones which keep people stunned and slowed and all that. So you might want to boost that crowd control. And the damage is not as much as it would be at light, but the crowd control is increased. But you're not getting as much ground. So if you're trying to be somebody who's heavy in that skirmishing, you want to attack and get the heck away so you can attack from range again, then you're probably leaning more towards light. Now, when it's heavy, it says, while wearing heavy armor, your dodge is a slow sidestep. Your block stability is increased by 15%, and crowd control debuffs you apply last 20% longer. So indicating that your block stability is increased by 15%. You're going to be better at blocking than anyone else. You're wearing heavy armor. If you're using some of the abilities that have you standing there and blocking with a shield, blocking with some of the others, the axe, the hammer, etc., then you know that your blocking is going to be better than others, and you're obviously there to take more of a beating. But also the crowd control is really buffed. So if you're looking for that, so consider the armor based on how you're looking at your character play. So like if we look at that life staff as well, you're in the protector class. Look, after a dodge, your heals are 20% more effective. Okay, I want to be one that dodges and can dodge a lot. You can dodge most in light armor, so that helps. Plus the damage and heals are increased, so I consider that. However, the next thing is when you block a melee attack, gain 5% max mana. So I could be heavier or medium and planning to block more. But I think the big point for this in your character class creation is, well, you're not going to be a dodger and a blocker. You're going to be look at the way your playstyle is going to work and set yourself up. If you're going to be blocking, you probably want to go with some heavier armor, or at least medium. And if you're going to be dodging, you probably want to go into that light or medium armor, depending on your dodge effectiveness. And so these are just all the gotchas to consider as you're looking at that. So we go, and our pirate stance here. So anyway, this is just a quick foray into building that class, and that in a classless system, and thinking about how you want to play and different options that you have. You've got a lot of options. You just don't want to gimp yourself and make it so that you're not having any fun and not having any effect. But you can try some things out and do some respec, so remember that. Anyway, I hope this video has helped, and if it has, please give it a like, and with that thumbs up, and do subscribe as we push for the subscribe notifications. Hit that notification bell as well so you know next time I'm on. Plus, I do live streaming. And check out below in the comments where you'll find links to my Discord server, as well as for my my Twitch streams, so that you can check out, and all the socials and things like that, so that you can kind of support and follow the channel. But drop into my live streams, as well as check out the other videos, and again, help with those subscribes. Let me know your thoughts, what kind of classes that you have been able to successfully put together that work well for you and that are fun, because it is about having fun and playing in a fun way. So I look forward to hearing that and seeing that in the comments. I'll be responding to those, unless you're a troll. Anyway, you know who you are. I'll talk to you later, and cock-a-doodle-doo.